Rewind the dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly as we hear from John and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads. And if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show. And if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
Hello everybody, welcome to Rewind-A-Dynamite. The very self-sufficient title that gives you everything you need to know about what this show is about. Hello, Wai.
Hey, John, how you doing?
I'm doing swell.
Swell. That's a good one. That means like a good 70%, 75.
Yeah, I'm going through this very difficult week on my sleep schedule, where I am not sleeping very well. And I've been up till about 4 a.m. the last 3 nights, and it has been rough on me. But what I'm finding is that late at night is where I almost get like a second wind.
Definitely.
I could use a few of those winds though during the day, because this has been a struggle this week.
Man, I feel for you, man. That sucks. Are you taking in your usual intake of coffee? Are you increasing the caffeine or what?
No, I'm not. I'm actually trying to decrease the coffee. So maybe that is also playing a factor in all of this. But it is, I don't know. I was inquiring. I'm like, I didn't realize how these babies just have a mind of their own, and these teeth that start forming. It's very complicated. There's no pattern to it.
Ooh, it's the teething process. Damn.
It's the teething process. It's the unpredictability, but that is what you sign up for.
You know, I imagine. I mean, when we think about it, we're like, oh, teeth. What's the big deal? We all have teeth. Why are you crying about this, you baby? But I think about it. What if I just suddenly had a bunch of bones spring up from somewhere within my body?
I'd be pissed.
I'd be freaking out. I'd be crying all over the place. I'd be in a cranky mood all day. So I totally understand. I sympathize.
Well, if you ever want to babysit Wai, let me know. You can maybe
I'm good.
This. No?
I'm all right.
Okay. All right. How's your day going?
Good. You know, maybe on the caffeine talk. I had my first coffee in like 4 days, and it's made a world of difference in my day. Like, I was super just alert. I felt like, myself. I got shit done. Not only that, I even had a can of Coke, John.
Dude, like, what is there heroin in your pocket as well? What's going on?
I had a can of Coke. It just is like, we went to like a Chinese restaurant like weeks ago, and like they give you sometimes, like when you order like a big family dinner, they give you sodas. It's just the thing they do at Chinese restaurants.
I've never encountered this. Okay.
Yeah, like most people just drink tea, but like I guess for the kids, they give you like just cans of like Coke, and so we're like, I guess we'll take them, like, just for when we have people over. And I ran out of things to drink, so I drank a can of soda.
Oh my god!
And so I'm just wired up. It just feels like I'm just, like off of like I went to rehab and then I just came back out and I just got back on the wagon.
It sounds like it. Wow. I'm trying to think. I'll have the occasional pop, but an actual Coke I have not had since the decade of the 2000s. Like the 2010s, not one. Nor 20s.
You're a ginger ale guy.
Ginger ale and root beer are my only pops that I will have. I'm not a big pop drinker, but
are you one of these seltzer people?
No, I don't like those either. Actually recently, when I had all of you over here in my backyard, and I bought a bunch of White Claws, and there were all these ones left over. And I had one just a week ago. Just not my thing. It's not even that it tastes bad. It's just, I'm not a seltzer person.
Well, I'm not even talking about alcoholic, like seltzer. I just mean like bubbly or aha.
No, I don't need any of that. I've got straight from the tap. Okay. That's what I'm drinking. Okay. Water. I don't need bells and whistles. I've never said to myself, you know what could make water better? I've never asked that question. Water is good. I like water.
Who thinks to add bubbles to water? Like,
oh my god, flavored water. It's like, come on.
Yeah, adding bubbles, like, if you want to, like, You can add bubbles to
you know, it'd be
anything.
great if like the oxygen particles I breathed in. I wish I could do something with those. Like maybe I could get peach oxygen that I can just put a mask over my nose.
Oh, they make that.
In.
Are you kidding me? Yeah, you never done hookah? Like, yeah, the vape. Sure. Anyway, I think people want to hear about wrestling.
Oh, I didn't watch tonight.
Oh, you didn't?
I watched Nitro again. Dude, could we have gone like? In a weird way, maybe Charlie Bastillo thought, you know what? There's going to be this big episode of Dynamite. What if they watch the worst wrestling show 24 hours before they watch one of the best?
He had carefully planned this. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that might have been the plan. We're going to get to Dynamite. And first off, I want to mention that coming up, we've got a lot of G1 coverage coming your way. Wai and I are back at it on Thursday. We'll have another show Friday, and we're going to squeeze one in on Sunday before Extreme Rules. So the grind is on.
Yeah, I totally forgot about this, that we're going to watch a G1 tonight, or really tomorrow morning, and then talking about it tomorrow. But yeah, it starts a 2-day stretch, and then Sunday. So we have a lot of stuff coming up, including, of course, Rampage, Rewind at SmackDown, and then Extreme Rules on Sunday.
Yeah, we will be back on Friday night. Special start time of 12:15. We're going after midnight on Friday night. I don't care how good the shows are on Friday night. I'm not looking forward to sitting down for 4 straight hours and then doing a show after. That's going to be a long night. But we will be live 12:15. We are not doing calls on Friday night. Have mercy on my soul is the reason. And we will be doing calls on Sunday night because we are making the Extreme Rules post show available to all patrons. Usually it's just double, ice cap and espresso, but all you 1 milk, 1 sugar patrons out there, it's your lucky pay-per-view because we are breaking the rules for Extreme Rules.
That is correct. Yeah, all patrons will be able to listen live and call in Sunday night after WWE Extreme Rules. And if that's not incentive enough to watch this pay-per-view, I don't know what is. And of course, in addition to that, you get all of our bonus shows, including the Nitro review we just did, including every single G1 show throughout the month of September.
So go check all of that out, and MCU Later will also drop on Thursday for all members of the Post Wrestling Cafe.
It'll be me, WH Park, and Brent Chittenden
talking
about Party Thor, this new crazy, wacky edition of What If that just came out yesterday.
Okay, well...
Oh, one last thing. British Wrestling Adventure comes out tomorrow.
Experience. It's an adventure every week, but it's truly an experience most.
Yeah, it is. It is Bushby and Thompson's Wrestling Adventure. That's what I meant.
They just have all these very vivid descriptions of what they do on Thursdays.
Yes. Anyway, so they're going to talk about Black Coal Sun, a PWG show featuring Kyle O'Reilly taking on Ricochet and Roderick Strong. So tune in for that.
Who's Kyle O'Reilly facing?
Ricochet and Roderick Strong.
I'm not familiar with this Ricochet.
Well, he exists, or he exists.
Did he go anywhere? One of those flash in the pans in PWG lore. All right. Well, let's talk about a few news items before we get to Grand Slam. We every so often we stop recording on Monday night, and then some big news happens within an hour. Such was the case Monday. Tetsuya Naito out of the G1, and due to a significant knee injury, and if it's an injury, it's going to be pretty damn significant to remove him from the G1. And this creates a whole ripple effect for the G1 where it is intricately booked. All of the wins and losses are designed to get you to your destination. And with a guy like Naito out with 8 matches to go, pure chaos, pardon the pun. But now what will be done is that all of his opponents will get forfeit wins, but they're all going to be working the shows against replacements in non-tournament matches. That will begin with Thursday's show, where Yuji Nagata will step in to take on Tangaloa, and then Naito was supposed to take on Shingo Takagi on Sunday's show, so Nagata will take on Shingo. But it's just a total curveball that you get thrown, but I can't even really call it a curveball this year, Wade, because you have to go in knowing that even the best laid plans, you're doing this in a pandemic. It's just for injuries. That's another obstacle that they have to overcome.
For as long as I've been watching the G1, like they've avoided this. They've avoided like somebody being so injured to the point where they're not able to compete, much less drop out of the entire tournament. And it had to have happen, you know, in a year where everything has already gone wrong. Anyway, so in some aspects, it's only appropriate that this would unfortunately happen for this. Hopefully, Naito will be back in time for Wrestle Kingdom at this point. I mean, it's what is it, MCL?
Yeah, I believe so.
You know, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what recovery times for those are, but it sounds, you know, kind of serious. So we hope for.
I would say, Wai, if he's out of the G1, I would say I'd take it as a significant injury, because I would say if there was any chance he would gut his way through this, like that, it tells me this has to be pretty damn significant to be removing yourself.
Yeah, and you know, it's Tetsuya Naito who was going to account for several of the bigger matchups throughout the tournament. Now, you know, you mentioned the replacements. Are they going to change up the replacements for every show?
It's going to differ throughout. It's not like Nagata's just taking all the empty spots. It's going to shift. Like Yujiro is going to take on Bushi because that's what these shows need, is Yujiro versus Bushi. But right. I guess like your other option would have been selecting someone to just insert for Naito. And I look at it and like Minoru Suzuki would have been a great alternative to have. But there's, in some ways, it's, you say, well, how could you predict this? This year with COVID and such, I would very much be looking at this as something where I would want to have some alternates ready to go, because there is no guarantee that they're not going to have more issues over this next month with just where the state of the world is. Yeah.
Well, I think for all of our sakes, you know, I'm really glad Minoru Suzuki made alternate plans this year, because
imagine Yujiro showing up at Arthur Ashe Stadium for the lights out match.
Yeah.
Instead,
Yujiro versus Nick Gage would be very interesting. Sure.
Oh man.
Have Yujiro fill in for Suzuki's US schedule.
Yeah, Nick Gage taking the pimp juice.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of interested to see what other replacements they have. I mean, you know, it's probably going to be just, you know, various people from the New Japan stable, whatever dads they have remaining, that might take those spots. But it offers at least some fresh, unpredictable variety to an otherwise, I would say, largely predictable, at least roster-wise, G1.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to change things up, and this is where this is a G1 that we knew going in. Like, there was the chance of stuff like this happening, and it could cause, like, an unpredictable winner at the end if there's somehow where they lose out on names. Hopefully, this is not something that they're going to have to encounter again, because I can just imagine the scrambling to put this together. Like, this is a very complicated tournament when you're talking about things out of your control, where someone drops out and you have to account for all those wins and losses. And it's also not just the wins Naito was supposed to have, but the losses he was supposed to have and how you make those up. It is like, I would be, my grade 12 self would have just been frightened at the prospects of this math to figure out.
You know, of course, the biggest casualty in all of this is the post-wrestling G1 contest. And
I love it.
Chris Angler wanted us to alert everybody that we will continue as planned, and all of Naito's matches are going to be recognized as losses, as forfeits.
You have to. Yes. This is part of the fun.
So goodbye anybody's chances of getting a perfect score, even up until I think week 2 into this thing. But nonetheless, it is a pretty even, you know, playing field still.
Maybe Vivian Murray thought that Naito was just going to get swept throughout the whole thing. Hey, he was going to go.
I think Rando Bot's chances are pretty good this year.
I'm going with Rando Bot. I think this year they could pull it out. So Thursday's show is at, they're doing back-to-back nights at Oda Ward City Gymnasium, and it will feature a non-tournament match between Yuji Nagata and Tangaloa, and then your A-block matches are Great Khan versus Toru Yano. Wai's setting his alarm for that one. Kenta versus Yujiro. It gets better. Kota Ibushi versus Tomohiro Ishii, which should be outstanding. And then Shingo Takagi and Zack Sabre Jr. So this is kind of the tale of the A block, is that usually you're going to get probably 2 great matches, and then it's anyone's guess what the rest provides.
You know, going into this G1, I mean, I think most people feel sort of the drag of it all. The roster is not looking that great, but the first 2 shows that have occurred have contained 2 match of the year candidates.
Yep.
And I would say day 3 looks to be just as strong in terms of possibility here with Ishii versus Kota Ibushi, and even Shingo versus Zack is a match that I think could do really well. So,
Zack was awesome in that match with Naito, and that match got overshadowed. The match that Naito, we assume he got injured in, that was a fantastic match. It was just overshadowed by 2 incredible main events. What a week this has been for contenders. And then Friday's show has Okada versus Evil, Sonata Taichi, Jeff Cobb versus Yoshihashi, Chase Owens against Tama Tonga, and Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Hiroki Goto. And obviously the B Block shows unaffected by this Naito news. So that is what we're going to be chatting about the next couple of days. Raw viewers from Monday night, they were up a bit going against a lesser watched Monday Night Football game, but one that still did over 11 million viewers, and they finished with 1,793,000, sixth for the night on cable, and they were up 14% in the demo with a 0.49, and the 0.49 is going to be the number that everyone is going to be looking at when the Dynamite numbers come out tomorrow. And do you think that the buzz will lift Dynamite above a 0.49? Last week, doing a 0.44 at the Prudential Center?
I think the answer is yes. At the same time, I don't think it's necessarily a metric I put so much weight on. You know, it's different levels of competition that they're experiencing both nights. But I mean, what you do kind of take away from it is the fact that, I mean, AEW in its short existence is able to do ratings this high. You know, obviously with a very stacked card as usual, but I don't necessarily like making these sort of direct comparisons just because they happen in the same week.
Well, Raw as well on Monday in Canada, they did 184,000 viewers, probably hit by the coverage of the federal election. And then Tuesday night, NXT 2.0 in the US held up, I thought, pretty well. 746,000 viewers and a 0.2 in the demo. So they were down 3% in viewers, which for all the hype for last week's show and the wedding and the title match being built up, for a follow-up, I would be very happy with that number. The demo was only down 5.5%. In Canada, though, and I don't have a great explanation for this, it just got killed in Canada, down to 45,600 viewers. That's down from last week where they did 92,500. So pretty much in half was the audience this week in Canada. They were against the Blue Jays, but they always have baseball competition, so I don't have a great explanation for that. Did you get to watch Tuesday's NXT?
I did. I mean, last week's edition I caught more so in highlight form, so this was really my first experience with NXT 2.0, and I think, you know what, looking at the roster, maybe a lot of people's first full experience with like a brand new roster. This felt totally different from the NXT of old. You know,
as Tommaso Ciampa calls it, the A show.
He can feel that way. Sure, he should feel that way. He's the champion. But this was a show where we were pretty much introduced to all the people that you usually do not see in the Performance Center who have been training. And you know what? Like, I know it's very different. It's not the Super Indie of old. It's not the takeover I think we all fondly remember. But taking it for what it is, and that's a show for developing talent, I actually really enjoyed it. Like, I thought it was fun seeing all these people get their first shot on national TV with their brand new characters for the first time speaking in front of a camera. And I thought, like, it to me, it was just like it was fresh in that aspect, and like the ability to just kind of to sense that for all of these people, this was a very important show, and it almost felt like an independent kind of like school assembly, like play that everybody was working on. I enjoyed it.
I had such a similar reaction both weeks that this felt like if we had watched a reality show on all these people about wrestling, and at the end they had to put on a show. Mm-hmm. Like, it feels, there's some very heavy camp. I compared in my update today to elements of like the mid 80s Jim Crockett Promotions, where it was just quick, short squash matches and promos mixed with like elements of Glow, where it's these some totally over-the-top characters. Like, everyone has a character to them. Everybody is either, you know, it's a heavy percentage of athletic backgrounds that we're seeing here. Do you think that it is successful in the sense of getting all these characters introduced out of the gate, or do you think it's too much? Because both weeks, like, there are a lot of new acts that are being thrown out there. It was less so this week, but combined with week one, it's a lot of new names and faces.
I think it's a very tough task to try to introduce an audience to a brand new roster of like 20 different people, and that's really difficult, at least in the second week to accomplish. And I don't really think that's necessarily the goal. I think the goal is to get people at least started, and hopefully in a month, in 2 months' time, you get to be familiar with everybody. I think the goal with at least these first couple episodes is that you at least remember one or two names. I certainly think that they've accomplished that with Braun Breaker. I fucking hate that name. It's so bad.
He's the guy. He is the guy on the show. Like, he is so clearly the one that they are building things around. And I think for a guy that, I mean, the name seems to have been the biggest hang up with people, but for someone who had his first pro match last October, he's been doing this less than a year. I think he is very good for the level that he is at. It is so bizarre to be watching this guy, just the way, like, the singlet that he's given, he's literally doing the Steiner recliner, and they can't say it.
Yeah, I who knows what the idea is behind it? Like, I don't know. There's some weird philosophy that I guess they have that where they don't want to directly draw the line, but if you know,
and don't give him the recliner. It's like you're almost begging for it. You make Beth have to. It's a recliner. It just sounds so. At least
if you're gonna be coy about it, at least like call it the Breaker recliner or something. Give him the Franken Breaker or something like that. Like, I just the thing is. This guy is getting over, like, even on the internet, because of his similarities to his lineage, and that especially came across the moment this man opened his mouth. The internet was abuzz talking about how much this guy sounds, like his dad and like his uncle. And for that level of experience, I was actually really impressed by his comfort level on the microphone and in the ring, and clearly they are too, because they are immediately pushing him towards the title picture, Tommaso Ciampa.
Yeah, I think so. I think this guy's going to be rushed there. I'm looking at this guy as, I just hope he's not rushed to the main roster too soon. Like, he needs time to develop. Like, he's in the spot he should be. But, there is a lot to this whole revamp. And part of it is kind of the endorsement of this system will be quickly funneling people up to the main roster. That's the sole function. This is not about career talent that is going to stay here. It is about, well, we're going to see over time what the roles of your Ciampas and Kyle O'Reillys and such are. But, you're looking at your Ridge Hollands and Braun Breakers. And I will say the Lash Legend that they introduced on Tuesday night. This is
these names. I'm sorry.
I know. This is Unreal Howard, who is 24 years old. And she is one of the biggest, like, athletic prospects that they have signed. She played in the WNBA. And what was interesting is that she is debuting next week. And you would think that, okay, high level athlete, you would assume like she probably, you would hope, takes to the physical side. They are giving her an interview segment to host. And that tells me they are very confident in her being able to carry that and the personality side, which if they have that confidence in her to give her this segment, coupled with the athletic background, to me, she is the one to watch here. Like, I think I have very high expectations for her, and I think they do as well.
It's for reasons like that of, like, seeing the real life consequence of this person that they just signed off of this thing performing on TV for the first time on live TV with no tightrope. Yep. That makes the show actually really interesting to me. It's not going to be the show where you'll watch and expect a 5-star classic, but I think it's enjoyable in a different way. I also was interested in them pushing Dante Chen, somebody that they promoted very heavily as their first Singaporean-born star, and just even doing a quick Google search on the guy. I mean, I feel like already paying dividends in terms of coverage on in Southeast Asia.
He's gotten like a lot of like print media that has covered him because of that.
Exactly. In ring, like, we didn't really get to see a whole lot.
He's pretty green, even in the minute that we saw him in. But they are, like, outside of, like, the Cruiserweight title match and the main event, like, we're talking 2 to 3 minute matches. They are keeping these very short.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is what it is, but, like, we have to look at these shows not necessarily as vehicles, again, for these 5-star classics. They are vehicles to for business for the WWE.
This is the last segment of Saturday Night Live where they throw something out there and it's like the last sketch of the night and we see if something's going to get over and they bring those characters back. Like that's what the show is somewhat becoming. I want to get your thoughts on a few of the characters that they're introducing. I really enjoy the former Harlem Bravado as Andre Chase, who they're giving like a Bobby Knight character to. I really enjoyed the segment where he just is teaching and almost doing like a Dean Douglas, breaking down how Odyssey Jones failed and then being asked, didn't you lose in the tournament? Who the fuck did you ever beat? A lot of swearing on this show, too, that they are introducing here, but I thought he played this character very well. I didn't think he got over too well at the wedding segment last week, but this week they put more of a focus on him, and I liked the character this week.
I liked it, too. I guess I just kind of question it because of its similarities to the Tommaso Ciampa, the Timothy Thatcher gimmick. You know,
I think this guy's going to be much more animated and playing it up.
I suppose the whole like teaching in front of a class thing felt a little too close in a short amount of time, but I'm sure there's talent, and I hope that they're able to separate it a little bit in the future.
How about Joe Gacy, woke social justice warrior, who of course is a heel?
Yeah. I found it very interesting, and I'm actually surprised it took WWE this long to. I mean, Daniel Bryan, I suppose, if you want to kind of consider, a left-leaning heel, but this one,
a guy against pollution has to be a heel, yes.
But this one definitely a lot more on the political spectrum of things, and definitely kind of hitting those notes a little bit harder. And I enjoyed it. Like
he played it well. I think you really need a presence to pull this role off. I thought he did do that. Maybe he will do a bit next month where he will explain, I was invited to go to Saudi Arabia for a spot and I have turned it down. I will not work these Saudi Arabia shows.
Yeah, he gets like a WWE championship match against Roman Reigns and he turned it down. Because of his morals. No, I don't think they're gonna hit it quite that hard. And at no point, at least throughout the segment yesterday, did I really find it off-putting. I think everything kind of deserves, in pro wrestling, a lot of things in real life deserve us putting that microscope on it to see if it could be lampooned. And as long as I think he can straddle that line to not offend, and really just maybe poke fun in a I don't know, lighthearted way, like I see no problem with it.
And another element was how they rolled out pretty much everything for next week. We're getting 3 title matches. They're doing the delayed match between Raquel Gonzalez and Frankie Monet, Io Shirai and Zoe Stark against Gigi Dolan and JC Jane for the women's tag titles, Roderick Strong against Grayson Waller for the Cruiserweight title after Strong beat Kushida for the title, a no DQ match between B-Fab and Elektra Lopez, which would suggest that match has to go at least some amount of time, which is going to be ambitious for those two, and then the debut of Lashing Out with Lash Legend.
Oh, God. So what is the taping schedule for these? Do you know, John?
They're doing them each Tuesday.
They're all live, all of them.
That's my understanding, yes.
Wow, okay, because that's a whole different ballgame, especially for some of these people with different levels of in-ring experience. So maybe, in some ways it kind of adds a bit of extra intrigue to me, but on paper, these aren't shows that are going to really excite anybody because nobody really knows who these people are. So I am actually, surprised to see the rating hold up, and we'll see how it does next week.
My final point. My favorite interaction. Apparently now Trey Baxter and Cora Jade are an item. And I was able to determine this because after Trey Baxter's 1-minute loss to Dante Chen, he was in the back and Cora Jade came to a very down and depressed Trey Baxter and said, which I'm sure all couples have this exact verbiage between them. How long have we been together? Cheer up! Dante looked like a superhero out there. And as she walked away, Baxter reflected, superhero. So I think we are about to get Trey almost a superhero.
Oh, of course. Clearly, this is the every superhero origin. You lose
Ash Baxter, maybe. Yeah. Which to me, I gave way too much thought to all of this. But to me, and I've only watched this one little interaction, would it have not had more legs to it if we presented Trey Baxter as like having a thing for Cora Jade, and she wishes him luck before the match, then he loses, we have this same interaction, but they are not together yet, and in order to win her over, because she notes what a superhero that Dante is, that he tries to win her heart by becoming a superhero. Instead, they're already together.
Man, that's some Notebook type
I
shit,
gave
dude.
way too much thought to Cora Jade and Trey Baxter, but I feel this is so Baxter backwards, this story.
Yeah, I mean, they could do it that way. I mean, I imagine you might see further development with this storyline where maybe they'll tell us a breakup story. And in order to get to that, they wanted to start them off already as a couple. I don't know. I'm sure we'll wait to see. You know?
We do await. All right, those are our thoughts on NXT 2.0. You can go download Up Next with Braden and Davey, who were at Arthur Ashe Stadium tonight. I know quite a few people that were at the show tonight.
MJ is there, Ceno's there, Brian Mann is there, Ahmad Butt is there, a whole lot of our friends are there, so I hope they're having a great time.
All right, we're going to move on over to Dynamite Grand Slam, the largest attendance in AEW history. The attendance that they announced on television was 20,177, and we know that this was the largest non-WWE event in the U.S. going back to 1999 with WCW at the Georgia Dome.
That's quite the stat. Wow.
Huge event for AEW's history. And I mean, what can you say about this crowd other than it went live and it was like this sustained roar? It was insane to hear these 20,000 people.
Yeah. And not just 20,000 people like that, kind of like wrestling. These are 20,000 people that love wrestling. Like, in order to, I mean, AEW definitely is becoming a lot more mainstream than I think, we expected up until this point. But still, in order to know about this company, in order to decide to go and buy a ticket for it, you're probably a long time fan of this thing. And to hear all those people contained in this 20,000 seat arena was really incredible.
So then we have Bryan Danielson's theme hit. And he comes out, and this place, there was a delay of 2 seconds before they put together what they were starting with. And I thought that this was the perfect placement for this match, given what they were doing and knowing that opening quarter, number one, it's a quarter that typically does exceptionally well for AEW. And number two, you have the most leeway to avoid multiple commercial interruptions. They had one here, but this was, as clean a 30-minute television presentation as you could deliver in this with one picture-in-picture.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we have to continue to think about television shows in a different way from your traditional professional wrestling card, whether watching live or on pay-per-view. TV is very different. And let's not forget the aim of this is to try to get AEW their biggest rating that they've ever had for a Dynamite. And I think they stand the best chance of that by putting this up front, and with the other benefit of, a long match that, for people who complained about getting no Kaze ni Nare the other week, this was certainly not going to be subjected to, the restrictions of a show that might have gone long otherwise.
So I would have loved to have known what the conversation was like between Kenny and Danielson earlier in the day, because everyone has brought up their one singles match. It took place in April of 2009 at PWG at their 100 show. But I wonder if the two were also saying, hey, remember that time you and I had a triple threat match at the Markham Fair in Markham, Ontario back in November of 2008? Oh yeah, who was the other guy in the match with us? It was Tyler Black.
Wow, that was them. Wow.
Markham, Ontario, dude.
Wow.
I am 99% sure I did not go to this show. I have no idea why I didn't, but they came back to the Markham Fair a couple of months later. Markham was a big city for them, and it was at that show that Danielson and Tyler Black took on Richards and Eddie Edwards, and that was a show I remember specifically interviewing Danielson before the show That one I went to. And Kenny Omega was on that card. This is crazy to look back. It was Kenny Omega, Kevin Steen, and El Generico Dos against, which was Player Dos, against Austin Aries, Kenny King, and Rhett Titus.
It's kind of fun going back and looking at some of these cards and seeing where people are now.
But there you go. They shared a ring together in November of 2008 in Markham, Ontario.
And then maybe they shared some bubble tea or something in Pacific Mall afterwards.
Or chugged some cans of Coke, complimentary.
Oh, yeah, the Chinese restaurant in Markham, yes.
I tied it all together for you.
Very nice.
So Danielson comes out. He has billed the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson, and what a reaction for him. The atmosphere was unbelievable for just the two walking out. And when this belt...
It was very surreal to me. Like, I mean, it was one thing seeing Bryan Danielson come out in, like, I don't know, pants and a white t-shirt. It's another seeing him come out in his, like, you know, signature maroon trunks. Like, this is when it really sank in for me that, like, oh, I was seeing one of this show's main characters on this show now. And these are like feelings that I haven't had. I mean, you know, you have it with Punk, of course. You have it here, but these are feelings I never had since like the Monday Night Wars. You know, seeing one major character from one show jump to another, exactly looking exactly the same.
Yeah, it was. You know, sometimes we will just describe like an atmosphere. This is one you really do have to see because when the bell rings, this place, it was already like this sustained level. And then it went to another level when the bell rung and they just stood there and Danielson had the biggest smile on his face and they just took this in and it grew and grew. It was a sustained roar that was only topped by them locking up. And this was the biggest reaction you'd ever see a lockup get. And then booed when there was a breakup in the ropes.
These fans just wanted them to touch. There were definitely like big spurts of, you know, the you're gonna get your fucking head kicked in chant going here. And I was honestly impressed, like given how like non-existent that chant was throughout the WWE and how briefly Bryan might have mentioned it in some interviews this week, how much people jumped onto that chant. And it was not near, like, I would say even maybe, I don't know, would you even say 50% capacity at its peak? But it will be like in the weeks to come, no doubt about it.
Yeah. It starts and it's just, you know, they're just like going back and forth here, and this crowd is just into every little thing and just watching Danielson stomp the elbow. They worked up into chops. I will say, not like surprised at all, but it was just interesting to see the fact that the chops all elicited the same woos you would always expect, and it's not surprising to me.
I mean, at this point, the chops are kind of we always think of Flair, and he's the one who's popularizing them, and the reason why we're wooing. But it's almost disassociated now. It's almost just a natural reaction, like a reflex that you give when you see somebody do a chop.
Yeah, and I did not think that was going to change. It was more so just the fact that this is a fresh news story. And was that if you were performers, would you lean on the chops on a show like this, knowing that?
I would, honestly. Like we can maybe question the man's decisions, but I mean, this is ultimately a wrestling move. Yes, it's one he popularized, but it's also a staple of many professional wrestling matches and many people's professional wrestling movesets that I don't think about it too much personally. I doubt the wrestlers are.
Probably not. And I wouldn't even discourage as well from going that direction. It was more so just interesting to see how the crowd would react. Danielson's, he has noted the fact how easily he bruises and such. And my God, his chest was just a shade of red that it will make for an amazing Instagram post.
If he decides to take it, yeah. It looked like a terrible rash.
He lands a tope suicida to Omega, and then the elbow is sent into the post as Excalibur, who was fantastic in this match, is breaking down the label lock, which was taught to him by Neil Melanson. This was when Bryan was living in Vegas and training at Extreme Couture, and handed down by Gene LaBelle, and the focus being the shoulder. But Omega would take over. Omega was, I thought, just the most incredible, like, heel champion that was above this guy. How he's going to come into my company and think he can hang with me. I am the top guy, and he was just at such an elite level, pardon the pun. He was excellent in this match. The crowd is doing the yes chants, and then Bryan busts out a top rope Hurricane Rana. There's a Terminator dive, and after a series of roll-ups, Bryan Danielson applies cattle mutilation. And every 18 to 49-year-old male was just clutching their heart.
Yeah.
Benno is still unconscious from this spot.
I'm like almost shocked that like he never pulled this thing out. I mean, if he has like during his WWE run, and I forget, then please forgive me. But
what would they have named it?
It doesn't matter. You the yes clutch. I don't know, whatever, like something goofy like that. But the fact that he like has held off on using this move regularly for such a long time, only to bring it out right now for the hardcore audience who remembers that ROH run or like his independent run. It was wonderful. It was just a sign that said, like, I'm back, everybody.
So during the post-match scrum that he did at All Out, part of Bryan's decision-making came down to the fact that, you know, he loved WWE, but at times they overprotected me, and I want to go out there and I need some risk in my life. So this dude took a Snapdragon on the ramp.
Ooh.
Now, this is the one move in this match I could have done without. It was just, I understand, but this is the same guy that when he came back that one time told Brody Lee to just give me like a half Nelson onto my neck to test it out. Like, there is there's
a precedent for concern.
Very much so. And I would also argue the fact that the immediate follow-up was that running V-trigger down the ramp that elicited as equal, if not louder, a reaction that I don't want to see this guy not get up from a Snapdragon off of a ramp.
So I personally feel like it's the sign of like good professional wrestling when something looks dangerous, but it might not be. And I'm not a pro wrestler, never taken a Snapdragon in my life, and I don't plan to. But I have a feeling this is one of those moves that probably he does not feel one bit, you know. But it was something he probably feels no different than just doing a backwards roll really fast. I hope that's the case. But you're not wrong to be concerned. You know, in interviews, Bryan has said, well, audiences might be my newer audiences might be surprised at how violent this match is, or how violent my new style is going to be. And I have a feeling he's going to want to compete with like the likes of, you know, like a Jon Moxley doing crazy shit, or like, you know, Kenny Omega doing crazy shit. And I have those concerns too. But I don't think this instance was that.
They have to go to a picture-in-picture. This is after 17 minutes of the match. And Danielson, I mean, he does sell the hell out of this throughout the break. There's a buckle bomb spot that more so landed towards the ropes. And then Omega goes for an avalanche Snapdragon, which, if you can say anything about the ramp spot, has put the audience into a place where they can buy that Danielson might take this because he's out of his mind. But he slides out and hits a belly to back off of the top. He's favoring his right arm that he lands on from the suplex. We go into near falls. The audience is electric, and they break out into an AEW chant, which is becoming the norm when things hit a big level. It is AEW chants. And that was not something that kind of has organically grown over the past month or so during this new era of the company, is these chants.
I think they're very close to turning it into a Tony Khan chant. Tony's gonna kick your fucking head in. Like, yeah, no, I mean, this is a company that has built tremendous goodwill with its audience. I mean, throughout its entire duration, but especially over the past several months. So yeah, no, it's to be expected.
Kenny does go for the Snapdragon off the top, hits it, but in a way where Danielson rotates to land on his chest. This gave me some comfort.
You listen, I mean, it's like, on the one hand, we might sound like, like his parents, or Vince McMahon being overly protective of the guy, but we all know, like, his history with concussions. One bad concussion in this man's career, I think, changes a whole lot. So I think we have a right to be overprotective parents.
So he goes for another V-trigger. One Winged Angel gets countered with a Bryan Danielson Poison Rana. And Danielson is kind of scraped up on the forehead here. He fires up with these awesome kicks. Busaiku knee is stopped with a power bomb. More big near falls. Omega misses a Phoenix splash that Excalibur instantly recalls to the last time he tried this was the Lights Out match with Jon Moxley 2 years ago. The LaBelle Lock is stopped, and the final minute, we hit the 29-minute mark. Justin Roberts clearly gets onto the house mic for all of us to hear the time, but you can't hear him, and it's pretty clear that the audience did not hear him either. Excalibur is giving the update on the time, which they had announced was a 30-minute time limit, and they are just on their knees swinging. And suddenly the bell rings at 30 minutes, and my only thing was like, man, this crowd, like, just, they're upset because the match is over. Not in, like, a negative sense, but I think if they had been able to hear the 1 minute remaining, it would have, number one, that was the intention. I just think it would have been more of a dramatic end in the sense of them, like, almost counting down and such. But, I mean, what an unbelievable match. You could put this right along, I think, some of the best matches in AEW history, and I would say in Dynamite history, this is probably going to be people's number one.
Yeah, it's so hard for me to, like, remember some of the others at the moment, but I mean, a lot of the ones I think in recent, memory took place during the pandemic era. So outside of the pandemic era, absolutely.
This is going to get more remembered because of Danielson, because of the crowd. Like, that is going to put this one over the top, I think, for a lot of people when they're thinking. But it's, I thought it was just an incredible match.
I'm totally with you. I'm also with you about the countdown thing. I think the drama could have been heightened with a bit more attention called to the counting down. I think it must have been to them like a philosophical decision to not do the count. Like, New Japan might, like, in New Japan, like, the guy actually, like, would say, like, we'll
you get the updates every 5 minutes.
1 minute, and then like 30 seconds, and then like 15 seconds, and then 10, 9, 8, 7, blah, blah, blah. I think that would have added a whole lot here.
I do too.
But, maybe it was their creative decision to, like, not do it. And
well, I think they wanted Justin Roberts to announce it. It's just, I think there was a problem with, like, the audio that it didn't come out. Like, it just sounded muffled when he got on there.
But he didn't even, I only heard like 30 seconds or maybe it was like 1 minute. I don't know.
1 minute.
I didn't hear any attempts at updating it throughout. And that's when I think, like, you really have to ramp up the call towards the end. But how can you really complain so much about this match? Like,
you can't. I just felt bad that, like, this actually led to boos at the end, but it was, again,
it's a natural reaction. People weren't booing the quality of the match. They were booing the fact that it was over.
It was over, right? And they wanted more, which is the desired reaction. That's the whole point of this match, is that you want to see the extended match and get to its conclusion. So this accomplished its goal and then some.
Completely. You got every bit of the dream match that I think people wanted. You knew this was going to go to a rematch anyway, everybody. This was not for the title. Like, in whatever happened here, you were going to get a rematch, and keeping it inconclusive enough, just like Shuri and Hayashi Shita, you built to a rematch just like that very easily. It was 30 minutes of magic, and the match itself was, like, actually quite basic. Both guys work on each other's body parts, but it was the star power of the two and the chemistry between the two that was what made it. And this crowd and this atmosphere were just amazing. Bryan did in an interview talk about maybe an enhanced level of aggression and violence. I noticed a bit of added aggression, but to be quite honest, I think towards the end of his WWE run, he was already showing a bit of that. So I can't really say that I noticed too much of a drastic different style from Bryan Danielson here compared to his WWE self.
I thought this was a much more, like, dangerous match in terms of just certain elements of it. That, I mean, Bryan, like, you could see that certainly with some of, like, the Roman matches that they were, I think you were seeing elements of this, but this, I don't know. This to me did feel like you were very much removed from like your restrictions that you would have in WWE.
You know, in terms of maybe some of the spots he took from Kenny, yeah, maybe I would agree with that. And of course, we got the return of the cattle mutilation. But I also feel like this is a Bryan that is fresh off of 10 plus years, or how long was he in the WWE? 10 years?
It's 2009 with the brief tie firing.
Right, that's right. 10 plus years in the WWE. I think we are going to get a better Bryan Danielson in the weeks and months to come as he gets, you know, more accustomed to like modern guys like a Daniel Garcia or Darby Allin. And so whenever they plan on doing this rematch, I actually think they'll probably have a better match than this.
This was pretty to come out and do a hard 30 with Kenny Omega at this level. This was exceptional. And I would be very interested to hear his thoughts about this experience, because I go back to that interview he did a few months ago, and forgive me, I forget where he had stated this, was when he went out for WrestleMania this year. He's in the main event, and he felt nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would be very curious to see what this experience was like, because I imagine it did not seem like this guy was walking out and not feeling anything.
He mentioned he was nervous for this, like, you know, more so than anything in his post-retirement run. So, I hope he has plenty more of these experiences to come.
The Super Click is out. This is when Bryan is going for the label lock, and the Super Click runs out. They're helping Kenny, and Excalibur explains that Danielson would have won with one more minute to go. Almost makes you wonder if they knew that the time was ending when it did.
That's the other thing too. I felt like usually, like in these cases, I think the announcers would have like filled in the audience a little bit more. And I mean,
when I heard the Excalibur line, I was like, well, maybe they were working towards the label lock spot, and because that was the story. If he had one more minute, and the way it ended was they're just on their knees trading strikes.
Yeah.
So Cole and the Bucks are out. They triple super kick Danielson, and then Christian and Jurassic Express run out, and it's just they clear the ring, and they plug that coming up next is CM Punk's interview, which was the perfect thing to follow this. You do not want to throw a match in there. That said, I think AEW breaks a lot of the conventions we have, that if there was a match to follow this, I'm not thinking that it was going to die. Nothing was going to die on this show.
Yeah, I had noticed, I felt this was actually one of the more interesting aspects of this show. The fact that they took their two biggest stars and put them in back-to-back segments off the top of the show. Conventional wisdom would tell a promoter to space out these big segments throughout the show, but you know, this is the same type of guy who put a Bryan Danielson debut right after an Adam Cole debut and left people talking about that being the best close to a pay-per-view of all time. I'm very interested to see what the graphs are going to look like coming out of the viewership for this one. You know, we know this show will probably have peaked with the opening, and probably until Punk as well. But how high is that ceiling? Because you're throwing everything in there in this first 45 minutes, and how will it affect the overall average? And how many of these people who tuned in for Kenny Omega, Bryan Danielson, and CM Punk stuck around for the rest of the show?
And if you see a solid level of retention, I think you have to look at like the atmosphere and this crowd. And if you hook them for, you know, once this Punk interview was done, we're talking 40 minutes into this show. Mm-hmm. I think you're kind of set in your ways. It's like, man, I'm attached to my couch here. I think I'm going to watch the rest of this thing. And it's a super hot crowd. I'm like, this was a happening, as Gorilla Monsoon would say. You
probably like cracked open a can of Coke somewhere during the Punk thing, Pepsi actually, and you got to finish your soda, so you're probably sticking around. But it's you know, like so much of this is about building habits, right? Building habits for new viewers to tune in at this time and to stick around for the entire thing, not just casually flipping in for a match and then tuning out. So I'm very interested to see what the ratings are like.
My final point on the match is, it did really make me lament this past weekend, those two G1 main events and the atmosphere that was missing, that I think they would have had very much so for those two matches on both nights, that they're limited in how the audience can engage with them. But when you think about, it was a much smaller crowd. We're talking like 2,000 people for those shows, but nonetheless, it's something that I think in a perfect scenario, those matches would have had unbelievable reactions to.
It's hard for, wrestling promotions in pandemic stricken countries, or at least countries that, I don't know, still enforce like these types of rules to compete with the on-air product. But I mean, you're going to have a Hiroshi Tanahashi Kazuchika Okada match at some point in the next few years, I would imagine.
You might see a Bryan Danielson Hiroshi Tanahashi match at some point.
Maybe. Did you find it interesting? Because forgive me, because he did 2 interviews, and one of them I believe was with Barstool. There was where he was asked about Zack Sabre Jr. and he mentioned
the story is going after Zack Sabre Jr., who has taken over his Wrestling Observer Award.
Yeah, so he said he wanted to wrestle Zack Sabre Jr. in England, and I mean, I know AEW has plans to run England, and they have the relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling, but he was very, very specific about it. Does it make you wonder what the terms and parameters of his current contract are beyond New Japan even?
For Danielson?
Yeah.
I would imagine, it seems like I would think he has a similar deal to a Moxley.
Right. So he could do a GCW if he wanted to. He could do a New Japan, and I wonder what else.
Well, the question mark is US, what his flexibility is in the US. But I mean, he has mentioned the fact that not just Japan, but Mexico, I'm imagining he has the ability to do all of that stuff. With Zach, though, there's nothing preventing them from doing that in AEW. So I that's the stage I think you would want to do it on.
Yeah, I guess it would just be New Japan themselves, because I feel like we've only seen New Japan pair up guys that New Japan already employs or did recently employ, like in an Archer or John Moxley. Does that has not extended to New Japan pairing one of their guys with a Kenny Omega? Well, actually, you know what? The Kenta match.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are no limitations.
CM Punk walks out and just says, "How could you follow that? I'm glad I'm not wrestling on Dynamite, though I will be wrestling in about 2 hours." He says, "It's been a long time since I've been in New York City, and a long time since pro wrestling has been in New York City." Just a jab.
A very different, a world of difference between Punk and Bryan in the way that they've handled their post WWE exits.
Dude, you should just look at Punk's Twitter. This is a different human being.
Oh, yeah.
This guy is so happy.
He's back.
My goodness. Yeah. He's been told he needs to be mad and pissed off. They want the old CM Punk. Well, eventually you'll see him, but be careful what you wish for. What do I have to be mad about? And he brings up being tricked and jumped last week. They tried to put me through a table, but he can't help it. When he walks out here and hears this reaction, and here's the reception from everyone, the pissed off feeling goes away, and Hobbs and Taz and Hook, they tried to take this away from me. And he says that it's been so long since I had this, and it's been so long, I needed this. No one will take it away from me. This is mine once again. They should have finished the job. They made a mistake keeping me alive, and they slept on the legend of CM Punk. It's not my job to wake them up, but it is my job to tuck their ass in. Rampage Friday, Hobbs goes to sleep. Just an awesome, awesome babyface promo to send you to Friday.
It absolutely achieved its job. I'm telling you, yes. This Friday at 10 p.m. on AEW Rampage, CM Punk will be wrestling a guy named Powerhouse Hobbs. And that made the segment completely, I think, successful. I can't really say this was a great promo, because I feel the delivery was spectacular. It was A+, but I kind of feel like he came out here and kind of spoke in circles. I'm supposed to be pissed off, but I'm not pissed off. But then I'm pissed off again when I think about these guys. But then how can I not be? I'm not that pissed off, but I am pissed off. It kind of went back and forth a few times. But that's sort of the nature of improvised promos, which this I think very much was one. And in the end, again, it didn't really matter because it achieved its objective. It got this crowd going crazy, and the delivery was spectacular.
I just thought, the explanation was, I'm so happy to be back here, and these fuckers tried to murder me and end my life by putting me through this table.
That would be great if he just gave you a direct line of thought process like that, but it was kind of a bit more back and forth.
Well, in the end, it was just, I thought like a strong promo to send you into Friday and get people excited. And then he hugs Stephen Amell in the front row.
His heels co-star.
Yes. MJF with Wardlow versus Brian Pillman Jr. with Julia Hart, who was not even born when WCW ran the Georgia Dome in July of 1999. She was -2.
In her lifetime, this is the biggest non-WWE live show.
Biggest one of all time, yes, in her life. Pillman attacks MJF, taking him down, and MJF is just screaming at Pillman and then gets slapped in the face and then starts begging off. This is where they did bring up the agreement with AEW and the Owen Hart Foundation that Jim Ross said made him tear up when he heard about. There's an arm wringer that sends Pillman's shoulder into the mat. MJF works on the arm all break long. We come back. Pillman catches him with a power slam, and then MJF rolls to the floor and uses Julia Hart as a shield to prevent Pillman from diving onto him. And he lays out Pillman with a clothesline on the floor. And MJF puts his hands on Julia Hart, but Pillman drop kicks him through the ropes. The crowd gets into Pillman. They're chanting for him. And he goes for the springboard, but gets caught in midair into the salt of the earth. And Brian Pillman Jr. taps out.
You know, the crowd reacted really well to this because they're a very supportive crowd. But these two had, I think, really the toughest spot on the show, following Kenny, following Brian, and following Punk. I think Brian Pillman Jr.'s old school style is a lot of fun to watch, particularly in tag team matches. But I don't really think the 80s style with, like, you know, kind of your, like, almost like fun, but almost like cartoonish type of babyface. I don't think it really worked in this spot.
He didn't channel enough aggression for the level of grudge match this was supposed to be. Like, once MJF laid down the gauntlet with the Metheny promo, like, this becomes like a blood feud. And to me, Pillman he never got to that level. Like, you could see the mechanics working. Like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing now. It just, to me, it wasn't natural enough and displayed that kind of aggressiveness that it needed to reach, I think, to be at the level that promo warranted this match to be, and Pillman's response.
And I also feel like, I mean, I was pretty critical of, like, you know, how hard MJF went on Brian Pillman and his family. And I think we were all, you know, maybe somewhat waiting to see what this match would be, but in order to fully assess whether or not that needed to be so harsh. I think at the very least we were expecting a big near fall from Brian Pillman Jr. here to really kind of, like, I don't know, like, screw MJF in some way, embarrass MJF in some way. I don't really feel like we got that. You know, this was a bit of a straightforward MJF win on a guy that is far lower than him in terms of rank. So, man, with MJF having gone so hard on his mother and his family, like, I would have made Brian Pillman look stronger in Cincinnati, not just against Max Caster, but against MJF in his own hometown. But, you know, nonetheless, it's like these two are so young. They're going to get chance after chance after chance, and this is already, like, you know, a time to get a big spotlight. But did I come out of the show really kind of thinking about really either of these two, in particular Brian Pillman Jr.? Not that much.
Yeah, I mean, this was the thing. You load up a card like this, it's very competitive for, you know, those minutes and what's going to stick with people. Yeah, this was, they were in a tough spot. I would say the match was fine, but it was, I don't know if Brian Pillman Jr. is that. I think he really was benefited by the Moxley endorsement in Cincinnati and how they handled that Rampage with him. But we will see what the follow-up is, because this kind of does beg for something with Pillman Jr. after this.
With MJF, you mean, or no?
I just think in general, like, he has to sell this loss in some way. I don't want to see it just dropped and that you came up short here. I mean, if this spins him off into something or changes his character in some way, I think that could be at least a path, that there's a reason for this loss and then moving from it. Conversely, I wouldn't want to see him beat MJF either at this time.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a larger picture for MJF that you'd be, you know, just screwing with.
We could see him cost him a win or cost him a loss, you know, but maybe that's not the right time either.
Marvez interviews Chris Jericho and Jake Hager, and they are going to spank Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky, and they're really trying to get over fat-faced dipshit, yeah. And I guess we will see if the crowd chants this at Dan Lambert or not on Rampage, which is being taped as we speak. Actually, the match is over.
Fat-faced. I mean, this crowd will chant anything. They'll sing a whole song without music attached to it.
Jericho calls this the hardest hitting town in America, and we're the hardest hitting team in AEW, and he threatens to bite off Dan Lambert's nose, and he is ready to snack on some MMA meatheads in the Big Apple.
All right.
Lights go out, Malakai Black enters, and then Cody Rhodes makes his return alongside both Arn Anderson and Brandi Rhodes as Cody is in his Evel Knievel getup.
And Brandi, like, in a leotard just months after giving birth, so, I mean, incredibly brave woman. She looked great.
Yeah, and Rhodes to the Top starts next week.
I think that's a very interesting, like, timing, considering, like, the crowd's feelings towards Cody Rhodes.
Okay, so that's the whole focus of this match is on the crowd very clearly turning on Cody. But I think like this whole match felt designed around that. Like you have Cody before the match even begins, you're hearing the mixed reaction and he is very clearly playing to it. Like he is mouthing, okay, and this match was all structured around Cody being the subtle, if not so subtle heel at points.
Yeah, I think this has been Cody for a long, long time. Like I think he's fully aware that this crowd does not like him. Mm-hmm. I think it's been the case for all, like even before Malakai Black showed up here, but they keep dragging this out. They keep reverting him back to being, I guess, a default babyface. That I'm just curious, like, are they doing this because of the reality show? Are they delaying like the full on heel turn, or are they just like, because they are kind of teasing it, but they're not really. So I don't really exactly know what to think.
So it begins and Black sends Cody rolling out of the ring, and he does his backflip and just sits down, and they like it's a total babyface spot, and the crowd reacts in kind, and you can just see what is being constructed here. Brandi comes in to sit in front of Black and give the big fuck you as Cody jumps him, and this just gives the crowd like open season, like boo this man. And they played off of this. Cody comes off the top into a flying knee. They battle through the break. Cody takes a black mass, still nameless, and rolls to the ground, and he's selling like he is out cold. Black can't lift him, so he's just going to take the count out, but Cody rolls in before the count of 10, and then chop blocks the knee of Black, who misses in the turnbuckle with another knee, and Cody is focusing on the knee, and the crowd boos as Cody continues to work it over. The crossroads gets stopped, and Malakai Black hits a spinning elbow, and it resulted in this mark on Cody's temple that you could see later. It looked like this elbow just hit him flush.
It was his turn. I mean, maybe he'll show up with face paint all over his face next week.
There's another crossroads that gets blocked. Cody Cutter is hit, and then the crossroads is hit. Huge kick out by Black to the point Arn Anderson is on the apron, assuming the match is done. Arn then goes to climb around the post, and he slips off the apron to the floor, causing referee Paul Turner to be distracted. Arn gets up onto the apron, and Cody is Irish whipped into Arn, knocking him down a second time. And so Cody...
So yeah. I have a feeling Arn wasn't supposed to slip there the first time. Like, that made no sense, because the distraction amounted to nothing for Cody.
There was no point to do two Arn bumps. It seemed that, like, he was getting into position, and I thought the same. Like, did he legit slip and then knew his spot was coming up, and the spot was supposed to be Cody knocking into him? In a weird way, like, I'm not criticizing. It's like, it's very hard to think on your feet, but it's like the spot was achieved where Arn falls, giving Paul Turner the out to be turning his back, and Cody just going into the next sequence where he's capitalizing off of this. But obviously they needed the physicality with Cody hitting Arn.
But that wasn't the spot they designed. The spot they designed was Cody, or was it Malakai, bumping into Arn, and then Cody going down to check on Arn, which is what you got ultimately.
Wasn't it Cody was sent into Arn and Cody knocked Arn over?
I forget who bumped into Arn, but the idea was for Cody to go down and check on Arn.
And then Arn just like swats him away. He's like, fuck off.
Well, he was like, go back to the match. Don't check on me. But I mean, seeing the guy fall twice, of course I would have checked on him too.
Arn, you've taken more bumps tonight than you have in the last decade.
Holy shit. But I don't think he was supposed to fall that first time.
I don't think so either, because it made no sense for him to fall twice. So Cody is told, don't worry about me. He starts attacking Malakai and then nails Paul Turner, sending him away, and Black sprays black mist into the face of Cody and uses an inside cradle for the win, which is a real clever way if they're trying to keep Malakai Black as this heel, although I think you're just fighting against the tide at this point. And this crowd was so happy to see Cody lose that they didn't care that Malakai Black had to resort to black mist.
I'm feeling like they're not really trying to like get people to boo Malakai Black. I think they're just going with this because they know he's cool. As long as people like him enough to want to stick around to watch his matches, I don't think Tony Khan cares that much. This was an interesting match to watch in execution because of the weird, very influx heel babyface dynamics with Cody Rhodes, but also with the pretty strange finish, I have to say. I thought it kind of fell apart at the end even if Arn flawlessly glided around the corner from apron to apron and executed, I think I would have still disliked the finish. I hate Malakai Black going from a win as dominant as his first match with Cody in like a minute or 2 minutes to now having to resort to using mist and an Arn Anderson distraction in order to justifiably beat Cody Rhodes. That I wasn't a fan of. I think they've been booking Malakai Black incredibly strong up until this point. And I thought this also needed to be a dominant win. At least more dominant than maybe mist would entail.
Well, what's the mist going to do to Cody now? Is that going to send him into a dark place? Is he blind?
It'll turn him into stardust.
Ooh.
And into space.
Next week in Rochester, they only had one announcement to make, and that was Miro and Sammy Guevara for the TNT Championship. And we got promos from both. Miro has been humiliating Sammy's friends for weeks and acknowledges he did break his neck in the past. God demands pain, and she, his wife, demands pleasure, and sometimes pain too. So next week it is God's favorite champion versus the Spanish God, and Sammy's going to buy Fuego a new car.
Cool. You think it'll happen?
The title switch?
Change? Yeah.
It's possible. I don't know if I would do it right now, but Guevara is a perfect candidate. I mean, he would be, on that short list of people that if Miro's going to lose to someone, you could do it with Sammy.
I thought they were going to do a rematch with Eddie. Like, didn't it look like they were building towards that?
They definitely cut the promos after All Out that certainly suggested they were going in that direction.
Yeah.
Which they can revisit. It's just a question of when.
Yeah, maybe Sammy's better for that spot.
FTR against Sting and Darby Allin. Sting was among the biggest reactions on the show, which is saying something, given who was preceding him. FTR were in their NWO style trunks. They've gone from the Midnight Express to the NWO as Sting continues to be followed by this group all these years later.
Yeah, but like, maybe Mike Awesome will show up and interrupt the match. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to tie into this. When you bring up anything old WCW, I just think about that edition of Nitro we just reviewed.
Well, Sting is tagged at the start, and FTR is double-teaming him. He makes his comeback, scoop slams. This guy can do no wrong. Stinger Splash misses Cash Wheeler, and they take over in the corner. Darby gets the tag, and he goes for a coffin drop to the floor, and FTR catches him and drives him into the apron. We go through the picture-in-picture. Darby avoids getting his face paint wiped off by Tully, and we get another hot tag for Sting, who hits a high cross off the top to Dax. He gets his neck snapped on the top rope, but then counters a tombstone, and he's setting up for the Scorpion Death Drop as Darby climbs to the top, and we were going to get a tandem finish from both of them, and Cash Wheeler ruined this video game finish. And instead, Stinger starts hitting splashes. Dax puts a chair in the corner and he nearly jumps into it, but he pulls up and he hits a death drop to Cash. The splash, Dax ends up running into the chair himself. And then there's a Scorpion Deathlock applied to Dax Harwood. Cash is holding on to Dax's hands from the floor, and Darby comes off the top with a coffin drop that just kills Cash Wheeler on the edge of the apron to break his grip, forcing Dax to submit in 9.5 minutes. All due respect to Bryan Danielson going after his award and Zack Sabre Jr. trying to repeat, but best technical wrestler of the year, Sting.
Sting, wow. This was awesome.
I love this.
Sting's run from the hot tag to the finish, I thought was fantastic.
This guy works so hard in these matches. This guy is by no means just getting by because who he is. Is he Darby Allin? No, but my God, does this guy work so damn hard in these matches.
He's not Darby Allin, but Darby Allin is not 62 years old and coming back from a spinal stenosis retirement. Okay? When you consider all of these aspects, like, the man should not be doing any of this stuff.
Like, we need to come up with an award for what this guy is doing and name it, because I don't know. There's no award that you can attach to this guy, but he's doing something.
I feel like, you know, like he probably is going to rest for like 2 months after this and not have another
Good.
match.
He deserves it. Send this guy to Hawaii for a month. All expenses paid by AEW.
He rests for like 2 months in order to get this like 2-minute spurt. Okay. And he just puts it all into this 2 minutes, and they're a glorious 2 minutes. He was great. And FTR, like,
they were fantastic. They will not get enough credit for this match, but they were terrific. And I guarantee you, these two were on cloud 9, getting to bump around for Sting and get to do this match. Completely.
They set a beautiful stage for Sting to give these wonderful 2 minutes. I love the crafting of the chair, like, that he put in there. You expect Sting to take it with a splash, but instead it's Harwood who takes it. And I mean, Darby is just like, this really is a mutually beneficial relationship that he has with Sting, where Darby greatly benefits from, I think, Sting's added star power. Look at these live reactions that this team gets. Darby would probably get it on his own, but it's heightened that much more. And especially from a casual audience just tuning in on TNT with Sting being there. And Sting, of course, absolutely benefits from Darby's just spectacular modern style. So this was really wonderful.
Then the main event, which once you saw what the first match was, I think everyone knew what was going to go on last. And it's Dr. Britt Baker and Ruby Soho for the AEW Women's Championship. They did not resurrect any AWA titles. Jamie Hayter and Rebel were out with Baker, and Baker goes to the floor early on. They're checking on her, and Soho comes off with a high cross, taking out Rebel and Hayter, but Baker gets out of the way and hits Ruby with a swinging neck breaker onto the floor. JR says, "This certainly isn't Fabulous Moolah and Donna Christianello." And they mention Ruby's double shoulder surgery that she had over the past few years. Baker rolls for the lockjaw, can't apply it, and then eventually Rebel puts the glove on her hand, and Baker just gives a middle finger to the camera. She misses with the stomp, and Soho twists on the knee of Baker, lands a senton. Baker comes back with a super kick, and then Baker climbs the turnbuckle. She's teasing the Pittsburgh Sunrise, but Soho battles her on the turnbuckle, ending with Baker hitting an air raid crash, which played into the shoulders as she landed on them, and we get a near fall for Baker. Ruby is then driven onto the steps between the legs of Baker, and Baker just hit the nastiest looking stomp that Ruby just took like a shotgun going off as she goes into the mat, and another huge near fall. Baker starts arguing with Aubrey Edwards, and all of a sudden, Ruby gets up and hits her kick, the No Future, then hits one to Rebel.
Yeah, I think it's probably a Sex Pistols reference.
She takes out Rebel with one, and then Jamie Hayter is on the other side of the ring and snaps Ruby's neck on the top rope. Baker has recovered, and this allows her to apply lockjaw, and Ruby taps at 12 minutes and 35 seconds.
A very good match and a very worthy main event on this stacked edition of Dynamite. Immense pressure for these two, especially I mean, both of them really equally, but I feel like for Ruby Soho, especially, like only having one. I mean, this is her first big match in Dynamite, and to main event, at least on TV, this incredibly massive show. I thought she and Britt Baker put on a really stellar performance. I thought Ruby looked great. You know, already she comes across as one of the more seasoned performers on this women's roster. It was really refreshing to me to see the crowd give a heel reaction to Britt Baker in a match, because that is all due to how much they love Ruby Soho. You have a babyface finally in this match that people like enough to want to see dethrone Britt Baker. And while like the current chase for her towards the title is probably ending, I think the crowd loves her so much that I'm almost positive there's going to be a title reign for her in the future. But Britt is still really hot right now, and I think the person to dethrone her at the moment is still Thunder Rosa.
Yeah, I thought they had a really nice match. I thought, in particular, once they got to like the closing minutes, I think that's when they really hit their stride, and the audience was very receptive to the near falls. And I like to see the fact that they position them here. I think that's part of your star creation is perception. And some of these big shows, putting your women's championship on last, like that over time, it establishes this is a main event championship. I mean, we just saw, the women's tag titles on Raw switch in a 2.5-minute match in the middle of the show. And I think that just over time, that same perception can work on the negative. And I like the idea of the way they structured this match-wise on top of it. And that was our first 2 of 4 hours at Arthur Ashe Stadium. As I'm continually getting notes, the show is still going on as we speak here at 20 to midnight with that crowd. I'm certain are still up for the show.
And let's spoil the whole show right now.
It'll be on the website tonight, folks. You can check it out.
I'm kidding, everybody. Everybody's just shutting off the podcast.
Are people? Let me ask you this question: are people seriously going to try and avoid these for 2 days?
Yes,
these results.
I think so. I think so. I personally.
That's a commitment. So. Yeah. Wow.
I mean, they managed to do it for previous editions of Rampage. If you care, you care. If you want to seek it out, you can. But yeah. I imagine we'll at least get a whole lot of buzz though about like, wow, this match was great, or yeah. Like I think you'll probably get a lot of that, but I think people care enough about these shows to not to have it spoiled for them.
It was a tremendous edition of Dynamite. It was a big statement for the company going into New York with this level of crowd. The number is going to be greatly analyzed on Thursday to reflect what the hype was like and interest for this show. Because sometimes, like, great quality doesn't always translate to big number, but this one had exceptional hype behind it that I'm anticipating. I do not think they will hit their record for 18 to 49. That's such a high number that they hit for that first show. But total audience, I think that's within striking distance.
Yeah. I don't even want to venture a guess, but I think this will do really well, and I'm particularly interested in the quarter hours for this one, just to see how the layout of putting Bryan Danielson and Kenny Omega and CM Punk out there in the first 45 minutes helped out or affected the rest of the show.
So let's head on over to the forum, because I imagine we have some feedback for tonight's event, and we're going to start off with the poll. And tonight, on a scale of 1 to 10, this show generated an 8.88.
Ooh, triple eights.
Triple eights.
Very lucky.
Do you know yesterday, I saw this from Lenny Leonard, actually, that it was, at 9:21, it would have been like the 21st hour of the 21st day of the 21st year of the 21st century. It was something crazy, like all 21s yesterday.
I did not know that.
Nor do you care. Let's go to the feedback. I'm sorry, Wayne. I'm trying to make conversation.
These types of stats no, it's fascinating, but it's like they're so arbitrary. Like it's a human created thing, and it's not to mention, I mean, in every time zone, it's happening at a different time. So
remember when Bound for Glory took place on 10/10/10?
Oh, who could forget that? Yeah.
Let's start with Noah from Vaughn. Tonight was definitely a grand slam. The show went by so fast and felt like a huge pay-per-view. Omega and Bryan put on my favorite singles match of the year, and yet I still think they can top it in their next encounter. They have set an increasingly high bar for the next one on top of it that you would think, like, no time limit or something to that effect. But I think in the rematch, Yeah, potentially. But I think the rematch, you have to go over 30.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think so. Or some sort of like there must be a winner type of thing. Yeah.
All-time great episode, Noah says. It will be remembered for a long time. This was the best episode of Dynamite yet. 10 out of 10.
All right, we got a Jesse who says, good show tonight. The Kenny Omega Bryan Danielson match was awesome. I love the ending, and it leaves it wide open for a rematch. Cody was seen as the heel in his match with Malakai. Hopefully what we saw tonight was the beginning of a heel turn. I do question the way the matches were set up. I didn't understand why Omega Danielson went on first, and every match after that was not going to be able to follow it. I thought when they announced the women's match as the main event that we would see a title change, but we didn't. 8 out of 10. Yeah, again, Jesse, a lot of the conversation we had earlier on was maybe about this being a TV show and that being very different from what you would do for a pay-per-view. The idea here is not necessarily to peak in terms of match quality, but to peak in terms of viewership. And philosophically, I think they have a strategy here.
And as well, I mean, you're running a bit of a risk if you are booking a 30-minute match for TV and you've got to make sure all those 4 matches before it all hit their times, because you've pretty much got to start entrances by 9:15 and get everything in order to get your 30 minutes of TV time. And if you miss time that, you've screwed up the end of your show.
Yeah, I imagine in a scenario like this, if they decided to go with this for the main event, they probably would have scrapped something. But then somebody would have been pissed that their favorite wrestler didn't get a match. So this was probably the best decision for all of those reasons.
Mm-hmm. And I think as well, you're looking at if this match is starting at 9:20, 9:25, I think people are looking at it. That's it's kind of telling the tale. Starting it, I think it does leave the outcome with some doubt. I thought they made the right call. I feel pretty confident in that. Brett from Texas, amazing opener. I couldn't hear any time updates, and even though I was expecting a draw, it seemed to come out of nowhere. Still a top match of the year and adds to the eventual pay-per-view match. The rest of the matches were solid. Time flew by, but I couldn't help but think that the show would have benefited from a high-flying, flippy shit match, especially to show new eyes how AEW can be different. Where's my flippy shit?
I don't totally disagree, especially in the place where MJF and Brian Pillman Jr. took place. I think it would have been a better follow-up from maybe the emotional high of a Punk Brian, or Brian and Omega, to have a Lucha Brothers match in there or something. But I don't know. You'll get plenty of flippy shit on other shows.
Well, Brett seems like he had a high bar here. He says, I was also expecting a surprise or a title change at the end, but there was none to be had. Overall, great show, as the amazing opener anchored the show. 8 out of 10.
I don't like title changes for the sake of title changes. Soho winning the belt would have been okay. Would have been fine, I'm sure. But that's not the long-term story I think they're telling. There's still plenty of life in a Britt Baker run, and to me, the long-term story is Thunder Rosa. We got Andrew from St. John who says AEW loves to put its big TV moments on first, and there's nothing bigger than Kenny versus Bryan, a really tremendous match that showed off both of them in peak performance. Going in, I felt myself wishing the show was on a pay-per-view, but I wish I could have paid for this. Who do I give?
Oh my God, they gave it to me. Oh my God.
Can I just throw money out the window or something? Flush it down the toilet. He says he wishes this show was on a pay-per-view, but we're just joking because... Yeah, anyway, but it absolutely transcended being a TV match to me. Totally had the atmosphere of a G1 block final. I only wish they had announced the time calls more clearly and so the crowd could have built to the time limit rather than booed it. Love the main event. Hope we see more between the two. Black Cody was fun and it presented Sting well.
Okay, Muggin writes, CM Punk had it right about not wrestling tonight. Who would want to follow Danielson and Omega? I mean, in a way, he kind of did. He did have to follow them just a bit later. It was an electric, outstanding opener that fulfilled me. The draw just begs for a rematch for even more superlatives. The rest of the show hummed along consistently. Punk's promo was fiery. Cody Malakai is nudging the former to go heel down the road, and the Baker Soho title match was good. Friday can't come soon enough.
And finally, we got a Kate from Montreal who says, I feel I would need to watch much of the show again to properly evaluate it because I think I missed a bunch while I was recovering from the amazing opener. It set a very high bar for the rematch that's obviously in the mail. But it's not like anyone else let me down, other than the camera operators and director during the Malakai Cody match. I was especially impressed with Sting, who I thought gave his best in-ring performance tonight. I can't wait until I'm 62 so I can move like that. Although Tony Khan hasn't totally won my trust when it comes to the handling of the women's division, putting them in the main event tonight definitely helps. What should they do now to keep Ruby looking strong and energized?
I think the way this match ended really does beg for the fact that Ruby had this match won, if not for her backup. And Ruby needs a squad.
Ooh, okay. The Soho squad.
Yeah.
The... Yeah, no, who, I mean, obviously, yeah, like a bit of faction warfare, or at least her having some friends definitely would help. Who would you pair with her?
I mean, you have no shortage of them on the roster, but
she kind of already has established like a babyface team, right? Like Riho and Statlander, I guess.
That's right. I mean, they could kind of emphasize that, or maybe all of a sudden, Runaway by Groove Coverage could just blast over the arena.
What?
And
Groove
then you
Coverage?
have... I told you about Groove Coverage.
Okay. They have a song called Runaway?
In one ear, out the other. Anyway. Maybe that's something you could do with Ruby, because that was the story here, is that she was just outnumbered. That's what it came down to. She took out the two, but it was the numbers game with Jamie Hayter.
I think the Runaways is a totally cool stable name.
All right. Well, maybe that's a way they can go. So... very, very strong edition of Dynamite, and they'll be back on Friday night.
Groove Coverage. She should come out with Groove Coverage.
Everyone go listen to Runaway by Groove Coverage, okay?
All right, yeah. If they can score Rancid, I mean, maybe Tony Khan will have to put in a, big offer.
Listen, it'd be worth every dime, folks, to hear the great... I don't want to get us kicked off YouTube. Okay. I don't want this to cost us
I'll
money.
look it up on my own.
All right. So that's it, Way. We're back on Thursday. I'm glad I reminded you at the beginning of the show. G1 tomorrow. MCU later. You've got a busy day tomorrow.
Yeah. Watching the G1 in the morning with my coffee, maybe even a can of Coke. Who knows? Recording a show with you sometime in the afternoon. So look out for that, patrons. And patrons also, don't forget, Friday, you get that show. And then Sunday... live, Extreme Rules pay-per-view, live for all patrons. We'll even be taking some calls. So tune in.
All right. And also Dark Side of the Ring on Thursday night. We'll be covering Chris Kanyon. So I'm hoping I will get time to see that at some point before Friday, but we will do our best. So there you go. All of the news can be found at postwrestling.com, including spoilers. So go check them out. They will be clearly labeled, and we will speak with you on Thursday with our G1 coverage. Good night.